Why we walk in circles. Popular culture has been intrigued by the tendency of the lost and spatially disoriented to wander in circles, only to end up back where they began. Nature doesn't evolve purposeless systems, so why has science been unable to determine the driving factor behind this trait? We are searching the present for an answer forgotten in the past. The solution to this phenomenon lies dormant on a prehistoric savanna. Following the retreat of the last ice age, Homo sapiens adopted major changes in lifestyle. They relinquished the nomadic hunter-gatherer existence they had followed for almost 200,000 years and began cultivating crops and domesticating animals. The resultant agricultural surplus enabled the growth of towns, cities, the development of writing, and eventually the contemporary cultures we inhabit today. This momentous transition occurred in the prehistoric era, before any means of passing recorded information across time existed, so it is largely a mystery to us. Traditional archaeologists adhere to the "what you see is what there was" mantra. Since there's little left to see, they don't have much to work with and tend to reject speculation. A fossilized skull lets you measure brain capacity, but gives no clue of how its owner was thinking. A process known as the cognitive revolution is thought to have occurred between 70 and 30,000 years ago. In computer terminology, you might regard this as a software update for already extant hardware. During this time, we evolved beyond being anatomically modern humans, mentally upgraded, and gained the capacity for complex language and abstract thought. Our technologies improved, and other subtle changes eventuated. However, our hunter-gatherer lifestyle persisted. We just became better at it. The first human groupings were extended nomadic families known as band societies, wandering the vastness of Africa in extreme isolation. A simple band society might number only 30 individuals. Permit me to describe its possible composition. There are 5 mature males, the eldest of whom is 24 years old. They are accompanied by 7 females of breeding age, 2 of whom are pregnant, 1 close to term. 3 are nursing mothers. The other 15 children range from toddlers to juveniles approaching puberty. This is a mobile, vulnerable entity, moving only as fast as its slowest member. They have never spent a night apart from each other. They have yet to encounter other humans. The connection between mother and baby is the primary social bond. Our large brains enforce premature birth so that we may pass easily through the birth canal. Brain development continues outside the womb, rendering us helpless during the early years. Throughout childhood, extended relationships are nurtured by mutual grooming, enhanced by language, further promoting group cohesion. Staying together is a first-order imperative. If you're not part of a group, you can't survive to pass on your DNA. Wander off alone, and you're likely to be lunch. Any depletion would put the individual and the band itself in jeopardy. In a world teeming with predators, devoid of place names and tracks, immediate effective return to the group is vital. In conditions that impair visibility, such as darkness, fog, heavy rain, sandstorms, blizzards, or smoke, an individual might lose visual contact with their companions. Initially, the individual would still be relatively close to the group. The most perilous action would be to exacerbate this separation. The risk of moving further away would grow if an incorrect, straight-line course were adopted for any period of time. When distanced from an unknown point, the chances of selecting the correct direction from the 360 degrees available is slim. There is a narrow angle that will permit a reunion, and that decreases with every step away from the target. This is the original manifestation of the law of diminishing returns. The best means to achieve an expeditious reunion would be an involuntary fail-safe response, kicking in when an individual became spatially disoriented. This internal imperative would function like a primitive form of mandatory home detention. It would constrain the individual to meander the area where they were last in contact with their companions. Unless they stumbled back into the group, it would prevail until they could see, hear, or smell them. Regardless of wind direction, the seeker would, at some point in their peregrinations, be downwind of the band and better placed to rejoin it. This process would facilitate encountering tracks or traces the group had left in its wake. Professor Ken Hill of St Mary's University in Nova Scotia defines a lost person as follows. The lost person is unable to identify or orient his present location with respect to known locations and has no effective means or method for reorienting himself. While this is an adequate description for a person lost in contemporary times, it is not applicable in a prehistoric setting. For a lost band member, the only orientation point is the group itself and the shifting location it might currently occupy. It is an interrupted relationship, not a place. Spatial proximity is paramount. Were you able to ask a band where they were, their likely response would be together. Using a modern-day context to clarify this crucial distinction, consider a child detached from its mother in a store. Strictly speaking, the child is not geographically lost. The child knows it is in a store. If an adult approached and posed the question, "Are you lost?" the child would likely reply, "I can't find my mum." The child has little interest in where they are, only in whom they are with. If they stay within the store, at no point are they far from their parent. They are estranged from a relationship, not a place. The relationship exists wherever they are together. Band members may not know or care where they are, only whom they are with. They are intent on getting something, such as water and food, as opposed to somewhere. As hunters stalking game, they will daily walk into the wind, regardless of its direction. Before permanent camps, place names and tracks, there is no where, only here, and here is where you and the others are in time. If you had to name this shifting place, choose together. Contrast this with a contemporary individual lost in the Australian outback. Their objective is to get somewhere else, often their vehicle, ultimately civilization, which translates as the known, even if it's only a fence or a track. Their destination is distant from their current location, especially with SUVs, enabling penetration of remote regions. Someone lost today wants to gain distance from their current position. They will select a direction and pursue it in a straight line. Given good visibility, they might travel 5 kilometres, just over 3 miles, per hour. Consider the estranged band member in this situation. Moving 5,000 metres from their family makes reunion virtually impossible and survival tenuous. They are history. Worse yet, they are prehistory. Colin McGinn remarks in his book Prehension, "This is why it is often noted that human DNA contains the remnants of DNA from ancestral species, which may no longer be active, but are preserved because they are not harmful to the organism. There is no reason why this principle should not be as true for the mind as for the body. Relics of earlier minds may persist in descendant minds, even if no longer accompanied by the original environment in which they evolved." In his seminal work, Amoeboid Movement, Asa Schaefer, a zoologist at the University of Tennessee, described the movement of simple life forms. He went on to state the following: that a spiralizing mechanism is probably present in organisms with highly developed equilibrating and orienting senses would be the logical expectation from what has been said regarding the presence of such a mechanism in the lower forms of life. But the effect of such a mechanism would naturally be suppressed when the orienting senses are functioning. To test this point, a man was selected for experiment. With eyes blindfolded and ears plugged so as to render the orienting senses ineffective, a normal man was directed to walk straight ahead over a large field towards an object he had just looked at. Although a number of experiments were made with several individuals, none of them was able to walk a straight path. All of them walked true spirals or series of circles with remarkably smooth curves. The spirals were right and left-handed in the same individual and sometimes in the same experiment. Considerable unevenness of the ground has no effect on the curvature of the spiral. Structural differences in the legs are also without effect, for a person with one artificial leg walks quite as smooth a spiral as one with 2 normal limbs. From these experiments on man, it follows that there is a centre in the central nervous system which automatically coordinates and controls movement during locomotion, and particularly from the point of view of this discussion, the direction of locomotion when the orienting senses are not functioning. This centre must be very deep-seated and automatic, and insofar as it's influencing the direction of locomotion is concerned, it is of no discoverable use to man. Ace's failure to identify the utility of this trait has persisted for over 100 years, still confounding those who wish to stop monkeying around and go straight. With swimmers, I surmised this circling may ensure an individual was safely returned to a beach, an island, or the bank of a river, were he to fall in when unsighted in darkness or fog. This led me to speculate that the first aquatic life forms emerging onto land must have had a mechanism enabling them to turn left or right, permitting rapid re-entry into the water. This spiralling pattern, dedicated to the preservation of organisms, evolved early. Evolution from a sessile existence to motility permitted entering new territory. An option for return to the last known good configuration, should viability criteria demand it, is indispensable. While the advantages of this mechanism assist the individual, it excels when fostering social cohesion. This trait would assist any creatures that gather together for companionship and succour. In my opinion, its benefits are best observed when considering the survival of a band society on the African savannas. Without this preservation trait, these disparate human bands might not have survived to evolve into the farming communities that spawned us. This behaviour was crucial, especially after the cataclysmic Mount Toba eruption 73,500 years ago, which obliterated much of the population and caused a genetic bottleneck. Walking these circuitous routes through the ages has, perhaps, enabled us to be here today. Although writing didn't feature in early societies, intricate patterns did. An experimental walk enacted in a large paddock lasted 75 minutes, covered 7,500 steps, and took the rough form of 3 adjacent spirals, not unlike those of the New Grange passage tomb in Ireland. These simple spirals and complex triskelions may have been produced entopically, coming from within, possibly by shamans while walking in a trance. Aware of this inner process, maybe these ancients invested it with sacred, life-giving meaning. Study of this trait's symbolic manifestation in the spirals, labyrinths, and cup and ring marks of the ancient world may be worth pursuing. Perhaps Ariadne's thread lies coiled within, poised to deliver us from the abyss and dictate artistic design. That a survival trait so intrinsic eluded discovery is as mystifying to me as how I stumbled upon it. Despite our omnipotent technologies, we remain humbled, eyeless in Gaza, blindly striding the world alone. To succumb to this imperative and spiral back across time's convoluted course brings strange comfort. The past is closer than we know. We're not lost, just riding the circle line home. Our modern minds remain inexorably tethered by this vestigial leg rope to a long extinguished hearth, out of sight, just through the trees. What does this theory mean for us today? Awareness of its existence might improve outcomes in the field of search and rescue. In the USA, this hitherto inexplicable circling phenomenon is described as random walking and complete with algorithms factored into retrieval operations. I believe there is nothing random about this behaviour. It has purpose and meaning, albeit no longer pertinent in our modern world. To continue in our straitened circumstances, unprepared when it kicks in like an archaic airbag, has the potential to kill rather than preserve. Time's mirror has an ironic knack for distorting perspectives. What was once considered magical now seems mundane, and vice versa. Should you become lost and unsighted, know that an ancient siren song lures you to a former address. The refrain may slip your mind, but your feet recall the dance. Conserve your energy and linger until conditions improve. Ignoring this admonition will at best end in frustration. I recently walked 5,000 metres blindfolded. A man needs a hobby. I finished up less than 250 metres from my starting point. An informed populace is better equipped to adapt behaviour so the disoriented don't become the dead and the rescue teams remain in bed. May I take this opportunity to thank you for your interest and wish you many happy returns. Kevin Daly, Langhorne Creek, South Australia.